fairly safe.
Yeah, because now the use is no longer the primary residence.
Exactly.
It comes in
Yep.
at least at the time.
I think you add an endorsement, pay a little extra, but I'm 90% sure.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I thought of, and I really hope that. My understanding is there's like a baseball player, like a professional athlete that was renting his.
I wouldn't be surprised. Well, you got spring training. I know there are ball players that turn down the families and other places.
Yeah.
I know he was looking for an end at
Yeah. Well, they're there. I mean, I've seen them there. Almost like the past. I'm curious to see what it costs.
Yeah, I know.
Because it was at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The other one we had at the Williams house was fireworks. You know, like that was this one. I guess it was something kitchen related or appliance.
Yeah, you're right. That's what you're wondering. Did somebody leave something on in the kitchen? I don't know if they have gas.
It's not good, man. It's not good at all.
Yeah, and they're up in Chicago too, so it's not.
So I called Kyle. I know who it is.
All right, it's 6 p.m. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's our June 8th, 2023 regular council meeting. Lori, can I get roll call?
Mayor Young,
Here.
Vice Mayor Brandon,
Here.
Councilmember Giambra,
Here.
Councilmember Painter,
Here.
Councilmember Sartori.
Here.
And the invocation and pledge will be led by Councilmember Painter tonight.
All right. Oh, we're doing the pledge.
Invocation
Invocation
and pledge.
first. You can, yeah. I was like, do we stand for the prayer?
Everyone's really excited and I can say the pledge.
You guys are really anxious.
Yeah, don't worry, we'll get there. All right, well, thank you, Mayor. If everybody could please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this opportunity to gather here tonight, surrounded by so many wonderful people from our community, to give thanks and discuss the future of our village. Lord, as always, we just want to thank you for the abundance of blessings you've bestowed upon us this year, and we just ask that you keep everyone in our community, particularly our first responders, safe and healthy, and provide us with opportunities so that we may provide opportunities for others. Let us strive for greatness in all that we do, and remind us to always count our blessings. And during a time with so much opportunity for our village, there's also a great deal of uncertainty and so many challenges that we will inevitably have to face in the future as a community. And for that reason, Lord, we ask that you will be a beacon of light, our hope, and the rock on which we stand, so that we may glorify you in all that we do. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
If you could please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to get a motion for approval of the agenda with one revision. I'd like to remove agenda item 15, which is consider approval for road improvements and repairs with Wynn and Sons. I think Public Works is going to do some more work on this, and we'll probably see it next month.
I'll make a motion to approve and remove item number 15.
Second. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, first up, a presentation. We have the FCCMA Award presented to the Village Council, recognizing 35 years of home rule. Jeremy? Or Lori?
You want to go ahead?
Ready? Sure. Sure. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council. My name is LaVerriere, and I am the immediate, as of last week, past president of FCCMA, the Florida City and County Management Association, as well as I serve as the deputy city manager in Palm Beach Gardens. And with me tonight is Candace Walls, who's the assistant to the city manager in Boynton Beach. And on behalf of the over 600 members of the Florida FCCMA Association and our board of directors, we have a special recognition and presentation we'd like to make for you tonight. So congratulations on your 35 years as a recognized City of Council Manager Form of Government by ICMA, which is our International City Management Association. This isn't your anniversary as a chartered community. You were chartered 66 years ago, a few days ago, I saw. But 35 years ago, your administration applied to the International City Managers Association to be recognized as a council manager form of government. And we think that is very, very important and want to celebrate those milestones for communities. So we go throughout the state, throughout the, oh, I didn't thank you, Brian. So Brian Morey is the City of Atlanta City Manager. Thank you. Yeah, you snuck in. Anyhow, the council manager form of government was created to help separate administration from direct political influence and establish merit-based practices and principles and within local government. And this form allows us to provide neutrality and unbiased implementation of the policies that you set as a council. You set policy, the direction, the mission, the vision of what your community is going to be, the path you're going to follow. Then you have a professional village manager in this case that you give the marching orders to, and he gets it done. He gets it implemented with his staff, unbiasedly and with neutrality. ICMA started celebrating these anniversaries. So it's a over 100-year-old form of government, and throughout Florida, we have 411 cities, and nearly 75% of those 411 cities are council manager form of government. And we have 67 counties in the state of Florida, and just about 80% of them administer under the council manager form. So those are good, strong statistics. So we think it's important. We have a certificate for you. It's, again, been 35 years for you, and we'll probably be back at 40 years and so forth if you would have us. And before I conclude and ask you to take a photo with us, I know your humble village manager, I don't know how much he's told you or not about him becoming a recently credentialed city manager through ICMA. Not an easy thing to obtain, as he, I'm sure, will attest. It's a tough process to get approved. It doesn't come easily by ICMA. You have to have a really strong, proven professional background and some time in the seat to get this credential, and it's very important for managers, and we all strive to attain that. And he was recently recognized and celebrated at our annual conference last week, because there's only a select few each year that get credentialed. So I want to give a shout out for him, because I know he won't. And what that means is that he is deeply committed to local government management and being a professional manager. He will provide a report every year to ICMA about what he's going to do to grow and continue to learn, and then he's going to report back on that report to demonstrate that he did the work he said he would. That is an ongoing requirement of the credential. So you have a gem here, and I want to close by saying kudos to you as a council and recognizing the value of professional management and running and continuing to grow your fabulous village that you have. Like you said, you have a lot of work to do and challenges ahead, but you've got a beautiful community here, and under your leadership, you guys are just going to do fantastic. So thank you for having us, and if I may ask you to come down and just take a picture with us so we can put it in our state newsletter and present the plaque to the mayor, if I may. Here. Huh? Oh, you look pretty. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you, man. Thanks so much. Thank you for having us. Thank you, sir. Good to see you.
All right, next item on the agenda, item number 2, is a presentation on Palm Beach County Library System events and opportunities by Doug Crane, our director of the Palm Beach County Library System.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. As the mayor mentioned, my name is Doug Crane, the director for the Palm Beach County Library System, which serves your village as your library. And with me tonight is Henrik Larson, who is the manager for both the Jupiter and Tequesta branches, and also Nancy Davis, who is our supervisor on site. So if you go into your Tequesta branch tomorrow, you'll see Nancy, not myself or Henrik probably, but Nancy is your one here in the village every day. What I wanted to do tonight is just share with you all of the value that your residents are getting from your local library. Now, I know if I say, you probably think of public libraries as a place to get a book, or maybe a quiet place to study, or perhaps a place to bring your children for a story time. But I want to show you tonight there is so much more value that your residents are getting. I think you'll learn some new things every day. Plus, if you're under the illusion that libraries are this quaint old relic that very few people go to anymore, I think I'll be able to dispel that notion tonight. So I have some facts here about the library system. First of all, we have a vision to open minds to a world of unlimited possibilities. We believe our libraries are where people bring their hopes, their dreams, and we provide the resources and services that allow them to achieve that. And that's done through our mission to connect communities, inspire thought, and enrich lives. Our entire strategic plan is wrapped around that mission statement. So let me give you a sense of our library system. Now, as a library system, we are big and busy. In fact, last fiscal year, we had over 2 million visitors to all of our locations, and I'll give you a little bit of a scope of our locations on the next slide. But we had over almost 8 million items borrowed by our residents. That's print and electronic. We have 371,000 card holders. 100,000 people use library study rooms and meeting rooms. And over 332,000 PC and internet sessions were done both through hard connections or through our wireless. We are also the 6th largest county department. And they had 464 merit positions, 123 student intern positions across our system. And we love our volunteers. We had over 24,000 hours of volunteer service in our libraries. And we're considered one of the big 6 Florida library systems out there, along with Miami, Broward, Orlando, Tampa, Hillsborough, and Jacksonville. Now let me give you a sense of why we're big and such. We have 17 locations, with our Tequesta branch here in the north being the northmost, through the center of the county, down to western Boca, out through the western communities, all the way out to the shores of Belle Glade. In fact, we were founded in 1967, I believe, by an act of the legislature. We started in 1969, and the very first location was here in Tequesta, in what's now the Gallery Plaza, just around the corner. And I have a connection to Tequesta because my wife grew up here, and my mother-in-law still lives here. And my wife said she remembers going to that little library out there, storefront in the gallery. Now, of course, we have a dedicated building over there on Dixie Highway, which is very nice. And we got to our current size through a voter-supported library expansion program that ran for about 10 years. The voters approved it in 2002. We added 3 new libraries, replaced 3 old buildings with new buildings, expanded 3 buildings, and renovated all of our locations. And we even have a support facility on Cherry Road down in West Palm Beach, just north of the airport, right next to where they're building the new supervisor election site. And I'll tell you some more about those services in a moment. And we're currently under construction with our newest location called the Canyon Branch, which is always funny to say here in Florida. I've not run into a canyon yet in Florida, but the development is called the Canyon Town Center, and it's in West Boynton, and it will be a 33,000 square foot facility with our largest meeting room space. Now, how do the taxpayers support our library system? Well, it is through a dependent taxing district. Our governing board is the Board of County Commissioners, and our dependent tax district is only one of 2, along with the Fire Rescue Department. It covers all of the unincorporated area of Palm Beach County, plus 24 municipalities, including Tequesta and Jupiter, and many others. Our millage rate has held steady for over the last decade at 0.5491 mils. Roughly, that's about $100 for a regular, single-family home. But of course, as we know, that's all dependent on all the different property exemptions that are out there. Our total operating budget for this year is $86 million. And one thing about our operating budget is we self-fund all of our capital programs through that. So any renovation or new projects are funded through that, so we don't have to go back to the taxpayers for additional levies or funds. We also get a little bit of funding from the state. Any unused funds rolls over into the next year. we get some grants, and we also have our friends that provide donations to us. Now, for those of you who know the number of municipalities in Palm Beach County, you'll recognize that 24 is not all of them. There are a number of municipalities that have their own municipal library, and they've chosen to keep that going. However, to simplify service, we have agreement with 9 municipalities that their residents can get a card with us, and our residents get a card with them. So any resident of Tequesta can get a library card at any one of the libraries listed on there. So if they work down in West Palm, they can get a card with the city of West Palm. Now, as I mentioned, we supply a wide range of free material for the public. Now, I don't know if you want to guess approximately how many items we have in our entire collection. Think about it for a moment. You want to guess? It's a big number. It's actually 2 million items, both print and electronic. And basically anything that in our collection you can request. So if there's a physical item that's available, say at our West Boca branch, you can put in a request and it will come up to the Tequesta branch and Nancy will make it available for you when you arrive. Also, we automatically renew anything that you check out up to 3 times unless someone else wants it. Our physical items are all the things you'd expect: books, music, CDs, DVDs, magazines, and newspapers. But we have a growing collection of electronic material: ebooks, downloadable music, downloadable audiobooks, and streaming. In fact, you can get them all on your device. So if you're planning your summer road trip, cancel your subscription to Audible or one of those other ones that you pay for, and you can download most of them through one of our services. And also, a lot of people may be scared of coming to the library because of overdue fines. I know probably many of you, don't worry, I was one of those people who got overdue fines, even working at the library. Well, we discovered overdue fines actually don't do anything helpful. In fact, they hinder people's access to the library. So we actually got rid of those in 2019 with the approval of the Board of County Commissioners. And they actually agreed to wipe out all the existing overdue fines and many other charges. So if you haven't been to the library because of an overdue fine, don't worry, your record's clean, you can come back and get a new card. We also offer special items. In fact, we offer Wi-Fi hotspots. You can connect up to 8 devices on one of these spots through a T-Mobile connection anywhere in the country. So again, if you're planning a road trip, you're going somewhere, you can take one of these along. We also have our award-winning birding backpack program. You can check out an actual physical backpack with binoculars, field guides, pencils, study notes, to go out into any one of our natural areas to go bird watching. It's a great thing. And also for those who are aspiring to become citizens, we have citizenship kits that they can take home to study for the citizenship test. Now, also the library is a place you can come if you have a question. In fact, we fielded and answered over 820,000 questions across our library system last year. And these range on a wide variety of topics from health to business to literature to law, or just knowing, hey, can you look up this phone number for me? And we have a number of online research tools. So if you're frustrated looking through Google because all you're getting are advertisements or something that doesn't look right, you can go to the library's website, and with your library card, you can search dedicated, verified websites. In fact, some of our most popular things are consumer reports. So if you just bought a refrigerator like I did over the last weekend, you can use consumer reports to look up unbiased reports on different appliances. Plus, we have the back history of the Palm Beach Post and many other newspapers. We also have some specialized librarians who help out, and the one that might be of most interest to you all here in the room tonight is our government research librarian. Now, if you have a question and the village staff maybe don't have the resources or they're a little busy with other projects, you can call us, and our government research librarian will put together a dedicated package for you. And it's not only for government employees or elected officials, we also work with nonprofits. In fact, one of my favorite success stories is there's a nonprofit in West Palm called Families First. It works with families that are just on the edge of falling apart. They were needing their grant funded, but they needed demographic information on the county that they didn't have the ability to look up. We did it for them, gave them that information, and they ended up getting a grant worth about $100,000 to keep them going. We have a consumer health librarian who will answer any question you have on doctors, diseases, and drugs. I joke the only thing they don't do is write prescriptions or do diagnoses. We have a business librarian who works with our business community to help with small businesses, with job seekers, resources for business planning, etc., and a multicultural outreach librarian. I believe Children's and Teen Services are the heart and soul of public libraries. It's the first place where kids come and they have access to just about any book that they want. and they're not being forced to read, right? They can come to the collection. We had over 4,200 activities for kids last year with over 76,000 in attendance. We also provide homework assistance through a program called Live Homework Help. It's a free virtual online classroom with professional tutors who will connect and work through topics such as math, science, etc. So if you're like me and you have no clue how your daughter is doing the algebra that she's working on right now, you can turn her over to this and you can have someone who actually understands algebra to help them out. And certainly one of our most heartwarming programs is Animal Reading Friends, and you see the picture there on the slide. For children who are shy about reading to an adult, they can read to a therapy dog. And it's really quite touching to sit there and see a child blossom as a reader, reading to a dog. And we also offer a wide range of virtual activities, especially for teens who find it an easier way to get to the library virtually rather than in person if they don't have a lift. Now, we reach out beyond our library walls with our services, such as our bookmobile, which reaches over 42 stops over a 2-week period. These are typically locations over 3 miles away from a branch or a place where people have difficulty getting out, such as an assisted living facility. Also, for those who are homebound, we have a books by mail program that we send books through the U.S. mail to them and they can mail them back to us. It's a great way to connect. And for those who are visually impaired, whether permanently or temporarily, we have talking books for the blind, where we send them an electronic reader and books on a little cartridge that fits into it. And this is part of a nationwide network through the Library of Congress. Also for those adults who have difficulty reading, we have the Adult Literacy Project, where we train tutors through a national-wide program to work with adults to get them up to a reading level where they can read the newspaper, apply for a job, read government forms, etc. And some of the success stories we have out of that program are quite amazing, are very heart-touching. We'd love to partner in the community. The library system is a founding member of the Literacy Coalition of Palm Beach County, and my deputy director serves on their board of directors. Also, right now, we are very excited to continue our partnership with the school district for summer lunch service. Any child 18 and under can go to one of our county libraries during the month of June and July during the weekday to get a free lunch. And that happens right here at the Tequesta Library. Because as you might know, many children, the only reliable lunch they have during the year is at school. So what do they do during the summer? Well, right now, any of those families can come to the library and they can get a free lunch. We've been providing free lunches for the past 6 years. We also have a wonderful collaboration with the Northern Out Gallery in West Palm with our Books Plus Art event, where we'll pick a book and there'll be a book discussion, and then they'll go do a gallery tour on that artwork. Also, we are early voting sites. Last time around, we had 8 of our libraries were early voting sites. This time, 11 of our libraries are early voting sites. And in case you're wondering, Tequesta is not an early voting site. It just is not a big enough building to handle the volume, but it is a polling place. Correct, Nancy, on election day? Yes? Oh, it is not? Okay.
No.
Then forget I said that. So strike that from the record, please. We also have our Friends of the Library, which is our 501c3 organization that supports us. If you were interested in donating to the library, through the Friends is good. In fact, that bookmobile, which you saw on the previous slide, came from a resident who actually used the Tequesta Library to research all of his investments. And that's how he became wealthy. And he donated $250,000 to our library system for the bookmobile. So if anyone in the room has a spare $250,000 they don't know what to do with, please talk to me before I leave. I've got a few ideas. Finally, our library system holds activities for adults. We had over 3,100 activities with 27,000 people in attendance. We are also one of the largest computer instructors in Palm Beach County. We held over 1,100 classes last year and had over 2,500 students. This ranges from just learning how to use the mouse to learning how to use Office Suite, all the way up to digital media. So learning how to do video editing, digital processing, etc. Our Writers Live event brings nationwide authors down here to South Florida to talk to their readers. They tend to come down in the winter. I don't know why. They seem to like it down here. And finally, we also offer a wide range of cultural activities such as Hispanic Heritage Month, Haitian Heritage Month, Black History Month, and more. So we're very excited to be able to celebrate the diversity that Palm Beach County has. Like any organization, we do have concerns out there. One of them is through the state. We do get some funding from the state through a State Aid to Public Libraries grant. funding for the library cooperatives that are out there that support us, and new library construction grants. Unfortunately, the state has not been as generous as it has been in the past, although this year they did put over $9 million into the construction grants. We're still waiting for the governor to do his veto process, so hopefully that money will survive. Another thing that we're seeing is that our county is a fast-growing county. And as much as we're trying to expand out, we can't expand out as fast as the communities are. So we're looking at that, plus our long-term upkeep of our facilities, because one of the things that draws people into the libraries are beautiful buildings. And if the buildings are having issues, then people may not want to spend their time there. And finally, of course, changing technology. Every day, it seems, a new piece of technology comes out, and people come to us because they trust us to help them figure it out. One of my favorite stories is when the Kindle first came out. We had people coming to the library, up to our librarian, saying, please help me figure this out. And the first thing we said to them, well, you have to take it out of the box first, because they were just too scared of it to even open the packaging. So your local library, of course, is the Tequesta branch. It is a smaller location. However, many of your residents I know make the trip across the Loxahatchee to go to the Jupiter branch at the top of Military Trail. But your library card is good at any of those locations. So Henrik and Nancy are available. And one of the things we do invite you now is if you would like to come and have a tour of your Tequesta branch. Your mayor has taken that tour, and I think she can rave about what she learned there. But if you haven't had a chance, you can come on over. We're happy to invite you out. And I know we've been working with the village on several different projects. Henrik or Nancy, do you want to share briefly what we've been doing with the village? I put them on the spot, sorry.
We've just been sharing just our activities and our programming, and I come over once a month and bring the new happenings and put them in the little magazine rack outside. Also, what's very popular at the branches, as well as Tequesta, is the members in this area, when they go to print something, they realize their printer's not working, they're out of ink. So now you actually can go on our website and print from our website, or print from your smartphone, and then when you come in, just go up to the copier, put in your email address, and your prints are available. So that's been real popular as well.
So a final note as I conclude the presentation, you all have a little packet on your desk with additional information that I went over here, plus some extra stuff. There are a couple of extra packets in case anyone in the audience would like one. But that concludes my presentation, so thank you for your attention, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate taking the time to come talk to us. I know when I toured the library, I was really blown away by everything they offered. I had no idea like half of the stuff they offered, so it was really insightful. But council, any questions for Doug?
I just think it's wonderful, especially the lunch during the summer for the kids. It's a very value-added thing that I was not aware of. And that some days while parents are working, they rush out and they might forget it. And if it's safe enough to get over there, it's great to know that there's a resource like that within our community. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, and please spread the news. We're happening till the end of July.
No, I'll second that. I did not know about that program, and that is awesome. Just on a personal note, I took my 3-year-old daughter there a few weeks ago, and we got her card and let her kind of go through the whole thing, and it was such a cool experience that, I didn't need a reminder of how important libraries were, but it was definitely a cool reminder to see that. And now we have a bunch of books at our house that hopefully will not end up in late fees.
No late fees anymore. Let's bring them back.
That's right, okay.
I just had a question for you. The demographics of the village have changed quite a bit over the last 20 years. We've got a lot more families, a lot more kids. And I know in the past, there was some conversation years ago about whether the library system intended to put some additional money into the Tequesta location, the building, to expand and enhance that building beyond where it sits today. Because I think that building's been unchanged ever since it was constructed, I believe. I didn't know, you mentioned you had some capital improvement plans underway with other facilities and other locations, so I was just wondering if Tequesta has come up as a possibility in the future.
That's a very good question. We do have a maintenance program for all of our buildings, so Tequesta is on there, and we do go through and do our regular maintenance. The challenge we have in Tequesta, obviously, is there's really no room on the property to expand the building, so we would need to identify a different property. I know you don't necessarily have large parcels just sitting around unused in the village, so We do want to, we have some other ideas on how to expand service out, but certainly if there's ways we can expand the footprint there on the limited property, we would look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, funny you brought up the bookmobile. I called about the bookmobile years and years ago for my toddler because he wanted that for his party.
Oh.
He wanted a book party, and you guys, not you, but I was told on the phone that the bookmobile didn't exist, and the few that you guys did have kind of went to certain areas, you know, I'm sure you know which ones. But now that we have changed and we have so much youth in our area, I think it'd be great if we could once in a while have the bookmobile come through, whether it's at the park or go through the neighborhoods, only because pulling toddlers, especially multiple ones, into a smaller branch is a little intimidating, especially since the DeQuesta one, as much as I love it, it doesn't have a youth wing like the Jupiter one, which is kind of why everyone goes to the Jupiter one, because we can kind of let the kids, and we aren't like, shh, right? So I think it'd be great if we could find a way to maybe once in a while bring the bookmobile up here, which I think is great for our teens because they're a little hesitant. You know, they're into like the coolness, right? If we can get them exposure to books, bringing it to them for accessibility, maybe not every 2 weeks like the other one does, but every once in a while as like a specialty, I think that'd be really great in getting our kids keep interest in books and being a little more accessible for parents with multiple kids in tow.
We do, we have brought the bookmobile out to different activities around the county, so whenever a village is holding, or a town and city is holding a special event, they can reach out to us, and if we're available, we do love to come out, because it is a great way to reach out to, you know, different populations to raise awareness of the library. So if the village is holding any event, we might be able to bring it out.
Okay, I'll call you. I'm excited now.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
You too. Thank you.
All right, last presentation, agenda item 3 is an update on our general employee pension by member Ben Ward.
Good evening, Mayor Young and all council members. I'm Ben Ward. I'm the secretary for the DeQuesta General Employees Pension Trust Fund Board. And I'm here just to give you a brief update on our activities and some little information about performance of the fund. As a board, we meet regularly in these quarters here. Our last meeting was May 1st, and our next meeting is August 7th. So if I know y'all have a busy schedule, but if you'd like to join us, feel free to step in and listen in. What I'm going to talk about is the investment performance as of December 31st, 2022. And our investment advisor is Dana. And I'll just kind of summarize what they provided to us. And I guess I could advance the slides for the audience.
Try the other. Turn around.
Oop, there you go. All right. Our equity returns were 10.53 versus an index of 7.56 for the quarter. The fiscal for the 1 year average, it was a negative 18 against an index of a negative 18. So as we all know, the market has gone down in the last 2 years, but we are starting to see it turn around. Our fixed income return was 1.78 against an index of 172 for the quarter, and for the year it was 871 versus 9.5. They continue to maintain a well-diversified active core for our fixed income, and then our equity investments, they try to execute at a high level and look to limit our downside capture. Net of fees of 99.66% with a downside capture of 89.56. Our financial advisor is Ann Company, and they provided us a report as of March 31st, and our market value for the plan was as of March 31st was $8,602,862. Below that is how our investments, how they're dispersed. We got 50% in domestic equities, roughly 13% in international equities, around 20% in domestic fixed income, global fixed incomes just shy of 4%, and real estate we have a little over 11%. This gives you an idea of what we are invested in. The Dana equity is an actively managed account, and that represents about 25% of our investments. 2 or 3 years ago, we decided not to. We had 50% of our investments actively managed, and we decided 2 or 3 years ago that we would put 25% of it into an index fund, so that's what the Vanguard Index is. Our foreign investments, you can see that we're in Euro-Pacific growth and in the Dana International, and together they represent about 13%. And then you see our fixed income, it was around 20%, and then our real estate is 11.2%. In order for us to see where we are compared to how the market works, these are just the benchmarks that our various investments are judged against. I'm not going to go into details. You can see how what we use to judge our investments. The total fund is compared to those items on the bottom there. Then to look at our asset allocation compared to other public pension funds across the country, I'm not going to get into the details, but if you look at the median, our plan versus the median, we somewhat mimic what the median is across the country in the various categories. So for the quarterly returns, quarterly, that's just that's a small window to look at. But our total fund had a gross growth of 4% against a benchmark of 4.9%, and you can see the other results for the quarter for the various funds. And this is the fiscal year returns. And they're a little bit higher. As you can see, real estate is for a year is down more than the other investments, and we'll be interested to see how that plays out, considering what's been happening in the real estate market recently. Overall, the plan return is in the 63rd percentile at 9.97%, that's for the year. The annualized return is 10.71%. The 5-year is 6.9%, and since its inception, which this fund was created in 2000, we have a 6.3% return for the whole fund, and that's in the 21st percentile. Every year we have an actuarial valuation completed, and it's nice to report that the fund is in good standing. The contribution rate by the village is low compared to other pension funds in Florida. We are fully funded. There has been low volatility in the contribution rate by the village. In fact, the first time I saw the annual contribution was before I got involved, and it was $350,000. I was at a meeting, and it stayed between $320 and $350 for the 8 years I've been on the board. So it stays fairly steady. And we're working under an assumed rate of return of 6.5%. As I said, the fund is fully funded as of September 30th, 2022 at 102.9%. The village contribution as of this October will be 8.75% of payroll, which will be $352,041. There has been no changes in benefits since the previous valuation. The village contribution will be increasing this year, $30,871. That's 0.3% of payroll since last year. The primary reason is that the investment returns have been less than hoped for. It was 4.4% versus an assumed rate of return of 6.5%. The increase was partially offset by the salary increases weren't quite as high. It was 4.7% actual increase versus an expected increases of 5.2. And then there were more employment terminations. There were 7, and they only used an assumption of three employees would leave the village. The market value of our assets is $907,000 than what the actuarial value of the assets. That's a difference that they'll recognize over the next 4 years. But if the market improves, we won't have to we'll gain more of that by market performance versus making adjustments in our actuarial analysis. If we worked on strictly market valuation, the village would have to contribute 12% instead of 8.71, I believe it was, and the funded ratio would only be 92%. Other matters that our attorney and administrator asked us to talk about, there was an IRS a rule change which encourages retirement savings, and the required minimum distribution age was increased to 73, and in 2033 it will increase to 75. So in the near future you'll be seeing some plan amendments coming before the council that we have to adjust. And then our attorney Bonnie Jensen suggested getting a little better understanding of controls in place at our vendors, and suggesting retaining a village auditor for a standalone audit for specific reviews of reported deaths and ACH changes. And then adding multi-factor authentication for address and changes by participants, and that's, I believe, has already been put in place. And then the final thing is House Bill 3, which was passed by our legislature just recently and signed into law. That has to do with making sure that investments aren't being made based on environmental, social, or corporate governance characteristics. We always look at based on basically financial performance and risk. We don't consider those factors. However, our council did say that we will, if the law hasn't, we haven't gotten our last meeting, the law was under consideration and has been approved, but it's our understanding we'll have to file a report at the end of every year. What has to be in that is to be determined. I do know that our advisors were a little concerned about this because it's going to create a good bit of work for them, because they've got to analyze every investment. So when you got an index fund with a lot of different companies in it, it could be a little bit challenging. So we'll see how this all plays out, but we'll have to make some adjustments on some of the administration of the fund. I guess I didn't punch forward enough. I guess there's been an automation or an implementation of an automated email system for the progress of a member's application. when I first joined the board, we only maybe had 1 or 2 retirees. Now, as the plan gets a little older, we're starting to see some of our long-term employees go into the retirement ranks. So we're seeing more participation in the retirement side. Our administrator had some discussion on internal controls and enhanced verification of address change. And they have an audit completed of their operations every year, and they were happy to report for the 15th year in a row that their audit was clean and they didn't, there was no findings for their operation. Just a little background on our plan. It's a defined benefit, and the retiree is paid 2% of annual compensation times the years of service, and final compensation is based on the highest 5 years and the last 10 years before retirement. And there's different types of benefits of service retirement, disability retirement, death benefits, and retirement survivor benefits. And then as a member, you're able to start claiming at 62 or after 30 years of service. You can take early retirement after 6 years of service once you turn age 50. And disability benefits are based on 42% if it's if you were working, and 25 for non-line duty activity. And each member has skin in the game. All of the employees are contributing 5% of their salary to the retirement fund. And as far as the numbers or what we have 51 active members, there's 14 retirees, and 10 people have terminated employment, and they have the right to claim the money that was paid into the fund. Either they can get it early or at retirement age. And then the plan paid out $226,227 in pension funds last fiscal year. And before I get to questions, I believe you were also given there's a summary of expenses for our fund. It summarizes the last 3 years. And our fund right now, for last year, for fiscal year 2022, our expense ratio was 1.17%, which I think that's pretty good. A lot of public funds are as high as 2%, so I think our cost to operate is pretty reasonable. If you look at that summary that was provided for the last 3 years, in fiscal year 2020, there was a miscellaneous expense of $13,500. And what that was our actuary actually did what they call an experience study. And an experience study is they make assumptions when they do their annual analysis, and every 5 to 7 years an experience study is done to compare the assumptions versus actual results. And so that's why we have that. That's kind of an anomaly in our expenses, and that was back in 2020. So with that, I'll stop talking. It's a lot of numbers. I hope the audience understands that if anyone wishes to attend our quarterly meetings, I would welcome them to attend. You can see books and books of numbers if you want to come see it, attend our meeting. So with that, I'll try and answer any questions.
Thank you, Ben. Council, any comments or questions?
Just thank you for your service. It's a very important role that you fill, so thank you again.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
And I'll third that, but I do have questions for you.
I knew you would.
I knew you knew I would. When we talk about the numbers early on, we talk about gross. So there are obviously fees embedded into the funds themselves. So is that, when you refer to it as gross, are you talking about that's a pure gross number, or is that a number after the mutual fund expenses have been deducted?
As far as I know, it's a pure growth number.
Okay. So one of the things I've asked before, because if you look at the expense in terms of the admin expense, that's not too bad. But one of the things I've asked for before is that you guys also break out what the fund expenses are in each of the individual funds that are functioning, because the total expense of the plan has to reflect that number as well. The other thing is the investment expense number, since the mutual fund expenses are again embedded in those funds themselves, that investment expense number on that last page, what is that reflective of? Do you know offhand?
Which number?
It's under the expense ratio. It says investment expense, and it says for 2020 was 0.36, 2021 is 42 basis points, 2022 is 45 basis points. Because then down below it says investment expenses do not include internal mutual fund expenses. So it's just trying to get my arms around exactly what that expense is.
Right.
And if you don't have the answer tonight,
I can't give you that answer.
Okay. So if you
I do know that when we switched to the Vanguard Index Fund, one reason was concern was cost. And if I remember correctly, that fund's like 0.25% is our expenses on that.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a much lower number than the actively managed funds are. But since that's been broken out as a separate line item, and since the footnote says the fund expenses are already embedded in their results.
Right.
So if you can find that out for us,
Sure.
that would be
Sure.
great. Bonnie's recommendation about internal controls or auditing the control structure that the administrator has, they do an independent audit already. So and as you indicated, that passed with flying colors. Is she concerned that what we're getting from the plan administrator with respect to their audited results, there's a reason to question those internal controls that are in place? Because she was saying she was recommending perhaps having our external auditor for the village audit what their control structure is.
Well, it was something that our legal counsel, is wanting us to, because, we're growing.
Right.
And it does seem like every quarter or every 6 months, because we are now starting to have to process more retirement payouts and stuff.
Right.
We're finally getting to the point where we have more activity going on. So that was something that I believe is why our counsel suggested we consider.
Yeah, the only reason I'm asking the question is because they do have their own audit process that they have provided you with.
Right.
So my question is, does she have some reason to be concerned about or feel there's a need for some additional overview on our part?
I don't think so. It may be part of a, industry recommendation. We're going to get more information at our next meeting as to what might be considered for that additional audit.
Okay, and then you just alluded to the increase in activity because we have an increased number of retirees. When interest rates are low, it makes all the sense in the world for the plan to self-fund the actual retirement distributions. But with a smaller plan, we talk about the actuarial assumptions. You talked about the study that they had done back in 2020 to look at the experience. One of the risks of a smaller plan is that you can get some significant variances. For example, if the life expectancies end up going, 3, 4, 5 years beyond what the actuaries assumed, and you won't know that obviously until well into the future. That obviously can materially affect, the funding situation of the plan. When interest rates rise, it can make more sense to look at laying that liability off through the purchase of an annuity. Now, what that does is it protects you against the loss. You could also give up some gain if people live shorter than their life expectancies or other things happen. But I'm just wondering, with interest rates having risen as much as they have, whether the board or has maybe considered looking at that issue. I'm not voicing something pro or con here. I'm saying it might be worthy of consideration to take a look at that, to see if at this point it might make financial sense to begin to, again, in a higher interest rate environment, to purchase annuities as opposed to continuing to self-fund. So not really much of a, not as much of a question as a suggestion that they may want to consider that at this time. The other thing is, with the fixed income, there's been concern obviously about rising rates for the last couple of years. So one of the questions I've always asked is, what is the duration on those fixed income funds? And again, I don't know if you have that number tonight, but in the future, with respect to the fixed income components, if you could get the duration numbers, so we can see how much risk exposure they have to changes in interest rates, that would be very, very helpful.
Okay.
And the only other question I had is, I know we have a leveling process to take into account when the market overperforms or underperforms. We're $900,000 under right now, which, as you said, we could make up if the market overperforms in the future. My only concern there was that usually with actuarial funding studies, there's usually like a minimum contribution you have to make, a recommended and a maximum. So you had indicated if we had looked at the market value, we would have actually increased the contribution to the plan a bit further. It only increased $30,000, even though we have, basically market to actuarial a $900,000 shortfall. I don't know when the actuary gave you the report, if they gave you a range within which you could contribute. But if they do, I think that's something I would recommend you bring that to the council and say, okay, here's what's recommended, but here's the range, and see if, from a budgetary standpoint, when we go to the budget process, whether we might think it's prudent maybe to go a little higher than what might be recommended. Mm-hmm. Again, depending on what the investment outlook is and the funding position of the plan. So again, not so much a question as it.
Because they are very thorough in what they do. But I will definitely bring it to the board.
And I'm going to be in Seattle on August 7th,
So when would be a good time to, I guess it's in the budget process, is that now, when our budget starts October 1?
Yep.
And so if we maybe share that with you as to what our range was in our last report, to see if it's in the middle or if it's low or high.
That would be good. Anyways, thank you again, and I want to echo again, you've been on this for 8 years. I think I was on the general employees for 3 or 4, but I know how much work's involved, and we could not function as a village without the people who volunteer to serve on these committees. So again, thank you very, very much for all your service.
Thank you. Yep. I got involved to learn a little bit. I'm learning every day still.
You learn a lot.
Yeah, so I was just to say thank you for being part of the team, your hard work, and just keep up that hard work. And thank you for all the updates, so we have transparency, and that everyone, especially when we have new council members coming in, everyone's on the same page and knows what's going on.
Well, it's a pleasure to serve, and we try to not only, I know it's a lot of numbers, it seems like a lot of numbers, believe me, there's a lot more behind the scenes. But it's important to understand that this is a good benefit to our employees in the village, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that the funds that we've set aside, and they've contributed, like I said, they got skin in the game, and we want to try and make sure that we get them a good return on their investment, and that when they do retire, having put in their service with the village, that they got a good fund that they can depend on when they go into retirement. So.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. We appreciate your time tonight. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just real quick, I know on the consent agenda tonight, there's a special event permit for one for the pies. I think there are people in the audience tonight, and I just want to thank you for continuing to bring such a fun event to our village every year. I know I usually am not in a position to participate, but my daughter and I always excitedly wake up and watch everyone run by our house in the morning, so I'm looking forward to doing that again this year.
I as well. I physically can't run, but we sit there and we root, we put music on, and I drink my coffee and watch everyone else work hard.
So thank you. All right, moving on. Any communications from citizens tonight on any non-agenda items? Okay. Moving on to communications from council.
A few things that are really came outreach from residents to me that I just want to kind of read into the record. And I've spoken to our village manager about them, so I've got resolution report back. Had a complaint, or a comment, I should say, on the condition of the post office facility, and I know that our village manager has been speaking with them, and he has shared that with me, so I will report that back. I had a resident also reach out and inquiring about the village's desire or ability to build a sound wall for Brightline along North Cypress, north of Tequesta, all the way to county line. And I expressed to that resident, I will again follow up and say that that's, I understand the concern with that. There is a natural tree buffer that is there, but as far as a safety wall or sound wall, I don't know if that's a good use of our resources for a village of 6,100 and building a wall for approximately 100 people. So I spoke with the village manager about that, and there's really not a whole lot that we have done or can do. So I will take that back unless the council wants to take it up later in the meeting. And I spoke with Jeremy. We had at our Bridge the Gap event, had a resident of Dover Circle, not Dover Road or North Dover, but Dover Circle. And I have seen it when I was canvassing for my petition signatures. They showed me pictures. There's a regular flooding problem in Dover Circle. Very little elevation. So I'm trying to get more specific information, but I have seen pictures from the residents. So I just want to let them know, and I know that our village managers talked to our utilities department, and they're going to keep an eye on that as we go forward. But I wanted to read those 3 comments into the record. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing significant, but I just want to recognize our village's staff, all of our first responders, all of our committee members, and just give a great shout out to everyone who helps make this awesome village continue to be as great as it is. That's all.
Thank you.
And I'll say ditto to that, and that's all I have for tonight.
Mr. Sartori, thank you so much for bringing those items up, because that's what our job is to take that feedback and bring it up and make sure that they are being addressed by our fabulous manager and staff. It's summer, so my mind is spinning because we have youth running around and we do activities with them, and we're utilizing our natural resources, playing in the river, going to the beach, going to the parks. So it's very enjoyable in the summer to be here in the village. I would like to send a special thanks to our public safety, PD and fire, for what they did on, what day was that? Whatever day that was.
2 days ago.
2 days ago. Just so if residents are listening, everyone is okay, and the dog is okay, and he is doing well. It's great to see how quick the response was and how quickly they were able to put it out and harness the area for safety. And I thank the residents for being respectful, for not going near the area so that way they could do their job. And again, the community was amazing. Lots of residents came out and asked what they could do to help, and that's what makes our village great too, is the people. And everyone just wants to be a good neighbor. So I appreciate that. So thank you to the residents, and thank you to our public safety, and have a good summer.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I have nothing to add. All right, moving on to standing reports. Village Attorney.
No report, Mayor.
Village Manager.
We have a kickoff meeting scheduled for Tuesday for El Portal. You will see some surveying and some site work. I know that's been a project that's been a topic of conversation for a good couple of years now, but it's good that we're plowing forward with that. Tequesta Drive sidewalk project from Seabrook to Riverside will be starting in the next few weeks. We are waiting for the contractor to mobilize. Once we get that schedule, we'll share that. Public Works staff has replaced half the lights at Tequesta Park on the main baseball field. So pickleball courts, basketball courts, and half of the field lights have been replaced. So we're making progress. Successful Bridge the Gap event. We've got a number of positive comments from that. Summer camp is in full swing at the rec center. This week we had 115 participants, which I think is the most we've ever had. The EAC meeting scheduled for Wednesday, June 14th. Planning zoning meeting scheduled for Thursday, June 15th. And we have a budget workshop June 20th here at the council chambers. That's my report.
Okay. Any comments or questions for Jeremy? No. All right, police department.
Evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. You have my report, just a couple of highlights that I want to bring up. It was a busy month in regards to meetings, but training, that's something I'd like to touch on. Crime prevention through environmental design, Officer Franklin went for an update. And just to let the council and everybody else know that I talk about this, Justice DaCosta and both Franklin are certified crime prevention through environmental design. So basically what that does is it's not only residential, but it's also houses of worship or places of business. And what they can do is do an analysis of a house of worship and say, you should have, if you're gonna put cameras, this is where they should go. Your bushes should be this height, different factors to keep them safe. So we're in the process of doing First Presbyterian. We did it about 2-3 years ago. We're updating it again, but that's something that's available to all the residents. I'll probably do a newsletter about it this week. But just basically, if someone's thinking about getting cameras, there's no cost to visit residents. It is just something that we provide with our officers that are trained in that. Something that wasn't on there, and thank you all. I know, Councilman, I know you'll be there, and Mayor, you'll be there. On Tuesday, our track committee members will be recognized by the Traffic Safety Committee of Palm Beach County for all their efforts, their community and citizen award for all their great efforts to help, like Councilman Painter said, keep the village safe, best place to live, work, and play. So Joyce is here, Ms. Joyce is here, Mr. Bradford, they're part of that, and honestly, they've been a tremendous asset, just helping us with the police department in the village, and honestly, just making sure that we continue to communicate, and we're falling short just to improve upon that. So I love their feedback. We've actually welcomed 2 new members since then. And one more thing, I just got notice, I forgot to tell you. We are going to be honored, we don't know, top 3 place for traffic safety for Florida Department of Transportation in Orlando next month. They just tell you your top 3, you'll be one of top 3, hopefully number 1. We won that award 2 years ago. They didn't do it last year, but it's just basically similar sized departments throughout the state of Florida. So it goes to the efforts of officers helping keep reduction of crashes, summonses, violation, citations, warnings, interaction, and safety and education of our community. So 5 of our officers will actually be in Orlando next month, and they pay for everything for rooms and provide some additional training. One of them, which is great, is emotional survival for law enforcement. I've gone through it 3 times. It's actually great. So they'll have an opportunity to kind of go through that, some of the struggles of an officer, what they go through, as well as additional safety tips for traffic that they could bring back to the village. So that's my report, unless anyone has any questions.
Council?
Thank you.
Wait, I have a question. So I was wondering, we are not going to have our next council meeting. It's after the 4th of July. As police, and I will ask fire as well, are you guys doing any kind of informational and safety campaigns leading up to the 4th of July? Because I know last year we had a fire incident on the 4th of July, and would really like to not see that happen again. I know we can't control everything, but if we have any kind of public outreach leading up to the 4th.
What you're talking about with the fireworks at the house that started the fire up. Honestly, we will. I know Chief Chub and I have talked about that. We'll always put towards that time, we'll start putting some reminders to be mindful of the kids. As you well know, Governor DeSantis had signed a bill where there's certain holidays where it's allowed in the state of Florida, July 4th being one of them, but we'll give out some tips. We'll also make sure that we do a newsletter on that and kind of get the word out there just to be safe. So we'll definitely do some education on that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. All right, next up, fire department.
Look at you.
How you doing, council?
New face.
Council, mayor, vice mayor, and the residents. Obviously, I'm not Chief Troop. He is up at the fire marshal's meeting in Orlando, and I was just here basically if you have any questions. We have a lot going on in the fire department right now. We received our new ladder. We're busy training like crazy on that, as well as we have our new air fill station. I think he may have filled you in on that, as well as traffic preemption on all our vehicles. We finished our annual hose testing, hydrant testing, been to multiple Palm Beach County meetings and statewide meetings. They attended the Hurricane Governors Conference, and that's about it. We're in the beginning of hurricane season, so we're ramping up for that. Keep it short and simple. Any questions?
Council?
Well, that's new.
Yeah, I know.
Any questions, council?
No questions, but thanks for doing that water training as well in the river.
Oh, that's right. This week we had a multi-jurisdictional water training that we had in from Dive Rescue International, so.
I appreciate all the
It's
training
been very
on
good,
every
and we've
angle.
gotten a lot of good positive feedback from all the different agencies, so.
What cities are participating with us this year?
We have Lauderdale. I'm actually not physically in the class. I'm trying to think who else was in there. There's some from, I believe, Martin County.
I saw some
and
Palm Beach County trucks.
Palm Beach, yeah, there's Palm Beach County's also involved with it, so.
I want to say at the river one they did, I drove by and happened to see all the cars. There's about 30 of them
Yes,
or so.
it's quite a
So
large group.
They're working
And
together,
there's police officers as well as firefighters.
Yep.
So.
which is awesome. But I appreciate the training for every angle.
Yep. All right. Thank
That's
you.
it.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Too. All right. Utilities department.
Good evening, Marjorie Craig, Utilities Director. You know, Chief Trube is not here to see my photos, so usually he has a lot of photos in there. As the manager mentioned, El Portal, we have a kickoff next Tuesday to get this started. We're still working on the vulnerability assessment, and our new engineering intern is helping with that effort. And in July, I plan to have her come do a little presentation on what she's been doing this summer. Y'all know we experienced a heavy rain event on May 24th. I've got some photos of that. Flooding was experienced at DeQuesta and Cypress. And you may remember we lowered the weir at Cypress about 18 inches. And it helped some, but it didn't help as much as we had hoped. The report says that it drained fairly quickly in a few hours, and David reminded me it really was 20 to 30 minutes after the rain had stopped. But it's still not fun to see that flooding in that area, so we're looking at ways if we can mitigate that. It's just a low area of town. About 25 years ago, Tom Jensen from Kimley Horn said that's when they put the exfiltration trench in at Cypress. And David, my field superintendent, met with Palm Beach County and town of Jupiter, to look at make sure everything's cleaned and seeing what we can do to increase efforts there. So you can see the pictures of flooding May 24th, and then also a picture of the exfiltration trench. You can see some mulch on top of it a little bit, but it's still pretty clear, so it was not blocked or anything, so it was still able to flow. It's just we wish it was bigger and could get the water out of there faster, of course. And then following that are some pictures from last October, which was before we had lowered the weir. So it's hard to compare the rain events without looking at but just gives you an idea of what we have out there and what we've been doing. So the next picture is Joe, very proud of Chance, and we have got our NELAC certification, and that's just an acronym for the lab certification, National. I forgot the name of it, but it's of laboratory accreditations. So we used to have it to perform the bacteriological or BACTs. Now we've gotten that recertification, and what that'll do is that will turn around if we have a water main break or we have a meter replacement. Anytime we have to water's out of service, we can turn that around much faster than going to an outside lab. Murphy's Law, these breaks, they usually happen on the weekends or at night. So that's when labs are usually closed, and we have our lab staff that can now perform those tests. Those tests are, you have to have 2 samples, 24 hours for it to provide results. So it takes up to 48 hours to get those tests back, and that's if you are taking the sample yourself and starting the test. If you have to send it out to a lab, you can see that can be delayed. You have a chain of custody you have to do and get that. So it will put it's a good customer service oriented measure. So we're very proud, and you can see Joe's very proud. So the other is a list of items that we're working on at the plant, and several of these items have agenda items related to them, so you probably read about them. And on the following page, an important highlight is that we changed our online payment system. We had a lot of complaints about point-to-pay, a lot of problems, not only with our customers, well, especially with our customers, but even internally there were some problems with it. So we went to Invoice Cloud, and it was successfully implemented earlier in May, about mid-May. And then I do have our engineering, don't everybody look at her all at once, but our engineering intern is here at the council meeting, and we're very, very happy to have her. She is working on the vulnerability assessment with Jones Edmonds, as I mentioned, and she's also done some work on Beach Road Phase 2, which we're nearing 100% design. So she went out in the field, we were looking, we're modifying the connections to the multifamily residential units, because if we put a bypass in, then if they're out of service, it doesn't put everybody out of service. You can just turn the bypass on, take the meter out, replace the meter. It's another thing to improve customer service in case something happens. So she's also learning a little bit about, she has the NPDS permitting work, and she's in the same office as I am during the budget season here. So she's all the paper and the budget meetings. So we're having a good time though. So she's also going to spend some time with the Waxahachie River District next week. But beyond that, I'll let her tell you about it in July. Tell you about her experience here in the village. So it's been wonderful. The last page of the report is our customer service dashboard. You'll notice in the monthly revenue chart that April sort of is an anomaly, and that was because it was very dry. We sold a lot of water. We also had another temporary interconnect with South Martin Regional Utilities. And when we did the projections for the budget for fiscal year 24, we took that month out as not, sort of an outlier as far as projections. But we do like those months, however, from a utility standpoint. You can see our revenue by customer type. Primarily, we have residential customers. Cross-connection and control, it inches up and then it comes down a little bit. We're still working on it. We have the outside company that helps a lot with it. Our portal users continues to increase slightly, and our accounts receivable, the 180 days seems to be increasing. Our 90 days is reducing. It's a little concerning, but we are working with finance and the company that does the collections to try to get those down, because they've increased since the beginning of the fiscal year. And with that, are there any questions?
Thank you. Council? Councilmember Sarah?
Go ahead.
Thank you. On the dashboard, is there a quick explanation for me of cross-connection control? The middle graph, we're running at 50%.
So, yes, this is not my favorite graph. The 90% goal, best management practices, is something that this was put into place before I got here. This is very difficult to achieve. There are ways to raise that, I guess it's just called compliance, with the cross-connection control policy. So what it means is that people that have backflow devices have to have their backflow device tested every year or 2 years, and then what this means is they're not in compliance with that. Okay. So we have an outside company, Aqua Backflow, that helps track this and helps us with calls to the customers and making sure notifications. There are a number of different ways to get that compliance up, and we can talk about that further at another time.
Okay, I was just looking at general. And my last question, on those 180-day It's about $50,000 it's been running. Do we know how many, are those residents of Tequesta, or are they some of the outside non-resident folks? Do we know how many accounts that is? I mean, if we look at what an average water bill is and we're running $50,000 in arrears.
Yes, I could get back with you on
Okay.
some of those details. As you can see, most of our customers are residential customers, and about half of them are within Tequesta.
Okay.
I don't know the breakdown between inside, outside of Tequesta, but most of those would be residential customers.
Okay, thank you.
But I can get that for you. And, the cross-connection control, I've worked where we did the cross-connection control testing in-house, but then, so we would have to pay for it, and we would have to charge the customer to recover those costs. I mean, but that means additional staff or resources. I mean, that can be done here and many other places as well. The onus is on the customer to do the testing. West Palm Beach, they had us test them. We had to also have them tested annually. So it's just, there's different ways to do it. The other thing we can do is a stronger enforcement program, and that is up to turning someone's water off. But that gets to be, you can see where that's problematic, it can be problematic. So we want to try to move people into compliance without that.
Thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, Marjorie, I have one question for you. Where they're building the reserve,
I'm sorry?
where they're building the reserve on US 1?
Yes.
We've got a major pump station right behind there. That's on I think it's on the main property of the water plant. Are we intending, well, two things. One is if you walk back there, the pump does generate noise, so there's no units back there yet, but that could be something that is a concern for residents moving in there. The other thing is, it's pretty easy access to that pump station there, and I know usually we try to protect those pump stations with adequate security, so I didn't know if we had plans, or you might want to take a look at what we might need to do to make sure that that area is secured back there and is not accessible to outside parties.
So there is a lift station, there's a Loxahatchee River District lift station located in that area as well. So, it's like, so you're not talking about that, though? You're talking about just the high-service pumps?
Well, again, I'm not an expert in this area, so I don't know. I know there's a huge pumping structure right behind that property. And I believe it's on the water plant property.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's ours or if it's Loxahatchee.
Yeah, if it was behind it, then it would be ours, but I'll look at that and then,
Yeah, just for the
report back
future, we
to the
want
manager.
to make sure that, that area is secured.
Absolutely. That's a great comment. Any other questions?
That's it.
Just welcome, Miss Melanie. Congrats on your internship. Just keep us posted on the L portal so we can help communicate to residents that there'll be something going on when it gets to that point. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marjorie.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the regular agenda, old business, agenda item 13, second reading of ordinance number 09-23, which is increasing the manager's contract threshold from $25,000 to $75,000. Keith?
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 09-23, ordinance of the Village Council, Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 2, Administration, Section 2-81, Village Manager, Authority and Duties, to increase the village manager's contract execution threshold from $25,000 to $75,000, providing that each and every other section, subsection of Chapter 2 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify effective date, and for other purposes. This is second reading.
Do you council any questions or comments on this?
I wasn't here for the last council meeting. I know that prior to going to 25, I think we were at 10. So I guess my only question was, the need to go from 25 to 75, let's say, versus 25 to 50, I guess. Since I wasn't here for that conversation, I didn't know
Well, I mean,
what your feeling was, Jeremy, as far as,
we're really trying to be comfortable. We can be a little more flexible, especially when we're talking about purchasing vehicles and things, so that way when they're on the lot, we can do that and do it fluidly. assuming that we budgeted for it and, you guys have approved that in the budget. So usually, you're talking about vehicles that could be, excess of $50,000. So when we looked at the number, Gardens went to $500,000. We're obviously not doing that, but we wanted to find a number that we thought was still, keep me in check, obviously, but, still gave us the opportunity to be a little nimble with that, so.
All right. Thank you.
And Councilmember Dammer, we kind of talked about too, if it ends up not working, we go through a couple months, we can always just go back. So let's give a chance, let's see how it works out, and we can always switch it back.
Okay.
I did not bring this up last time. I was wondering if council would agree that we maybe should still have the same detailed backup for the items between 25,000 and 75,000 like we do in the regular agenda?
I say yes to that.
Okay. Okay, any public comment? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to new business. Agenda item 14 is a conceptual presentation from MDK DeQuesta for office building off Bridge Road.
And Mayor, as I always do, if I can just read into the record the relevant portion of the village code on this topic. Conceptual presentation is not a quasi-judicial proceeding. No action shall be taken by the village council beyond discussion with the applicant. Neither the outcome of this conceptual presentation nor any comments made during this conceptual presentation by any village council member or village staff is a guarantee or assurance in any way of the final action that may be taken by the village council pursuant to a formal application for site plan review provided by the relevant portions of our code. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, council members. The application that is in front of you is a conceptual presentation from MDK DeQuesta LLC for a new two-story, 5,956 square foot professional office building. The subject property is located at 110 Bridge Road. Part of your package is an staff report. So per the Village Code Section 78332, staff is now required to conduct a preliminary review for compliance with certain code requirements such as height, number of stories, density, open space, and lot coverage. As you are aware, before this last month, a conceptual presentation will come in front of council without reviews from staff. So there is a table that provides the compliance or not with the existing code. So the applicant is here and he has a presentation.
Good evening, council members. For the record, George Gentile, president of 2GHO Inc., and we're here representing the conceptual review for MDK DeQuesta. Let me get my PowerPoint going here. And as I told you before, I will bring all my projects in for conceptual review because we want to have a discussion before we go further. But Mr. Kerry Stamp, which some of you know, who's been a long time resident in North End here and also has his business here, which is Kerry Stamp and Company. They're financial wealth managers and financial planners. I know that because they take care of me. And they do a phenomenal job, and because of that, they're increasing in their business, and they want to stay here in DeQuesta. They own the Bridge Road property, which was built in 1982. It's a single-story building now. It's approximately 2,400 to 2,500 square feet, and they really need to increase that. And while they have had us looking at other buildings and other properties throughout the north end of the county, from the Gardens to DeQuesta, Mr. Stamp wants to stay here, and he's wanting to redevelop this property. This will be a major redevelopment based on your code because it will be they will be using some of the current walls that are there. They will be leaving some of the foundation there and then building it back up to the new building and get the square footage. So let me go through, again, that's what I just said. I should have flipped the thing, but the new building will go from about 2,500 square feet to about 5,986 square feet. It will be 2 stories. Your code allows for 4 stories in this area. He certainly does not want to do the 4 stories, but is wanting to do this to remain here. And then, as Nilsa indicated, the report has some nonconformities. This property currently has nonconformities existing on it. And so we are going to work with your staff to the best of our abilities to decrease those nonconformities and bring that back to you with your other comments that we may have on the project tonight, and do the best we can to make this work. It's considered in my efforts a infill project and a major redevelopment project. So, okay. So very quickly, this is just to give you kind of a general location of the site on Bridge Road. It's directly across from the drugstore that is located just north of it on the north side of Bridge Road, catty corner from Paradise Park. And there's no residential immediately surrounding. It's all retail, commercial, restaurant, and other businesses. We have a tire store that's been there for a long time on the west side of Bridge Road, and there's some other retail adjacent to it. So just to give you a picture where it is, US 1, of course, is to the east of the property. There you go. So this is the proposed site plan. I'm going to get close in a little bit. We're trying to maintain as much of the footprint is in the area of the footprint previously. We've taken the pavement out of the eastern side and increased the landscaping in that area, which I'll go over those percentages in a minute. We're leaving the parking area as much as possible as it is. We are meeting that portion of the code. So this is in the C2, it's community commercial. The site's about 0.3 acres. Again, I talked about the 2 stories that Mr. Stamp is trying to propose here. The existing landscape open space is one of our nonconformities. It's at 10.5%, and in our redevelopment of this project, we were able to increase it up to 15.6%. There's 20 parking spaces provided and 20 required on the site plan, so we're meeting your code in that area. This is the site data. You can't read it very well, but just a few particular items that, if you'll bear with me one second. I've gone over the area, the 5% increase in the landscape, and then we're exceeding all of the setbacks except one. We are on the exact setback for the east side, which is 10 feet. All the other ones are way beyond your required building setbacks for the site. And then we are also approximately the property line, because when you look at this site on the aerial, is about 40 feet. The property line itself is about 40 feet from the center line of Bridge Road. So there's a lot of area before the property line that also has this setback quite extensively. So, and then we will be, of course, landscaping that area. This is the floor plan. This is the ground floor plan proposed. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to see Mr. Stamp's free online, both on social media, financial advice. They're very, very good. I was even featured one time as for the marine industries, and then also for my history here in Palm Beach County. He does videos of community events, community things, but he also does free financial advising on that for the residents in the area that are using social media. It's very good. So he uses some of the rooms for the videoing. He does it all himself. And then this is his upper floor, his second floor plan. Again, all offices. There are some work rooms, conference rooms, and those type of things. You see the stairwells that he has to do for the new building code. He has to have 2 of those. He will have an elevator, but the fire code now and life safety codes require 2 stairwells now instead of 1 for any upstairs, so he has to put those in as well. And then this is the upper floor plan. You can see the core going up. There's a tower section that comes up with the elevator and one of the stairwells, and then he's going to have an outside deck area on the top of the 2nd floor. There's a lot of buildings and a lot of office buildings that are doing this now due to the pandemic. I have attended a number of meetings in the outside in commercial buildings so that you're not inside or enclosed, particularly when we were in the midst of the pandemic. A lot of the construction companies and other companies in West Palm use their upper decks for that. They put outdoor furniture, and if the weather's nice, they go out there and have their meetings, so everybody's in the fresh air instead of in a closed building. So that's the purpose of the upper deck area right now as we're looking at it. This is the existing building. As I told you, there's a large lawn area before it gets to the paved area of Bridge Road. The building is a single story. It has a mansard barrel tile portion of the roof right now. This is the building. This is actually the northeast side, so the face that shows the balconies will be facing Bridge Road. I will tell you that Mr. Stamp is very desiring of doing a modern building. Your financial center that's on US 1, which is the other big financial center building, I call it the mini Darth Vader building because we used to call the big one down in West Palm the Darth Vader building. That is a modern building, and this is an area that he would like to stay in. We want to hear your comments, of course, and we will react to those comments as we need to. This is that tower, what I call the tower core, has the stairwells, elevator, and some of the mechanical rooms in it, but as an architectural element on the building. And then this is, oops, I'm sorry, went a little bit too far. This is the other 2 sides. The side that you're looking at now faces the south, which is all parking, and goes down the alley to the new renovated Park Avenue Barbecue. I don't know what it's going to be. It's been changing daily on our end. So I don't know what that is, but Mr. Stamp is also going to be talking to Mr. Modica about allowing them to possibly overflow some of their parking on their back parking lot. Since it already happens, they might as well get together on it and help the restaurant out as well. So, so we may be talking to them about that as well. Just in conclusion, again, they want to revitalize this 40-year-old building. It will remain his offices. He's staying here. That's why he wants to do this. It's not a cheap endeavor to do this, to stay here. And so we would like to hear your comments on it. Thank you very much, and I'll answer any questions or take comments. So,
Thank you, George.
Mayor, thank you.
Council?
Thank you, George, for the presentation, and please pass along my thanks to Mr. Stamp and his family for wanting to stay, in Tequesta. They've owned it under the current ownership for about 12 years or so.
Yes.
And I appreciate what he's trying to do. I love how he's willing to reach out and work with some of the other neighbors to kind of help maybe where they're falling short or may potentially fall short, to kind of share some parking. I think that's fantastic. I like the building. I like the concept. I like he's trying to keep the part of the original footprint. I think what I'll ask, my first comment, I think you might hear it again, is kind of, I know he wants to keep, Mr. Stamp, the more of a modern look, which is consistent with some of the buildings. I like what I've seen in the Treasure Coast Master Corridor Plan, with a little more maybe a West Indies, or I think think they call it, West Indies or Mediterranean revival. Just kind of soften the corners a bit and see if you can get work that. So I'm excited to see this come back, and I hope it can come back. But my comment would be to maybe soften the style, kind of shy away from modern, because I think the resident feedback that we're going to hear, and I love that we have a very passionate resident base, is they're going to hear that it's a little too modern, a little too industrial. So my comment would be perhaps a little more some of the elements of West Indies or Mediterranean revival.
Okay.
And I look forward to this coming back.
Great.
Yeah. No, I think it's the design. I actually don't mind the design all that much. The only thing I would, and just to echo what Rick said, and I'm sure you've looked at the Treasure Coast plan, but given the proximity of this site to Main Street, I know it's impossible to know what that's actually going to look like at this point, but in the Treasure Coast plan, they really do, it runs through the plan as that kind of West Indies look. I personally don't have an issue with a more modern design, but given the proximity to Main Street, it would be nice, and hopefully that does get developed at some point here, it would be nice to have it somehow, be somewhat cohesive with what that could look like, which, again, I hope that they try to match that design.
And I think that when we take this back to the architect, there are fenestrations and elements that we can to soften that up, and also a little bit more detailing on the walls, particularly. He moved the balconies to the front so that it is looking out that way, like so that there's a lot more detail on that front of the building, which I think is good towards Bridge Road. We don't know what Bridge Road will be eventually, but we hope that it'll be a vibrant road, and that we think the balconies there would be good for them to be able to go out and maybe there's something happening across the street. So. And
I'll also echo what Councilmember Satori said about we appreciate Mr. Stamp staying here. That's awesome. Yeah. Whatever it is, I mean, it's a fine building now, but it is old, and I'm sure it'll be a great improvement for our village to have a nice new building there. So thank you for coming in, and please extend our thank you to Mr. Stamp as well.
Good evening, George.
Hey.
I'm going to echo what the other two gentlemen said. The fact that he wants to stay in Tequesta and revitalize the site, I think is wonderful. I think we all know Bridge Road is ripe for redevelopment, and it's going to happen. I appreciate the fact that he's doing it at 2 stories, not the 4. Yeah. And he's not trying to use every little single square foot of the lot that he could. So he's trying to develop something that is in keeping with the spirit, I think, of what people in the village would like. I would echo the same thing about the design. I know when we came up with the design guidelines, we weren't trying to pigeonhole anybody into just one, although I think there is a predilection here that a lot of people like that West Indies look. But we said we wanted to, give the architects some flexibility and some freedom, even if they were to go the modern route. But I agree with what Rick and Patrick has said. I think it could be softened. I think it could be architecturally more appealing on the exterior, particularly for if that street becomes not just a drivable thoroughfare but a walking thoroughfare, which I think is what we hope in part. You want something that's really appealing, and people look at that building and say, "Oh, wow, this is great." So I think he's on a good track, and again, I'm echoing what the other two gentlemen said.
Okay.
All right, you ready? So I made a list. I wanted it to be efficient as possible and make it organized, so as you take your notes, hopefully it all makes sense and I don't have to go back and forth. Setbacks for the property line. If he comes back, if we can get a visual graphic that looks straight at the property, because the angled is great for, I think, us, but some of the residents were getting confused, where is Bridge Road in this picture? And it started to make them think that, let's see, the northeast corner, that was...
I understand.
Yeah, it just made the setbacks. So just so we can reassure our residents that the setbacks are being met.
Well, when we do come back, we have to bring you elevations, and so there will be front elevations, but we'll make sure that they're rendered so that you have the same thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The open space, I just want to make a mention, just be very cautious of it. We need to include it. Make great use of it is what I mean with your landscaping. When I first saw this, to be honest, my first word was eh. And
Can you spell that for me?
EHH. And I only say that, so I'm concerned about the trees, let's see, the northeast corner, the trees that are up by the building, because they're so close, you know, I'm afraid you might be limited to using palm trees because of the root system. So maybe just reassure your applicant, make sure that they have something other than just tiny baby palm trees that they can do there. The other thing I want to bring up with the landscaping, with our charrette process we did with the residents, I know you were in that discussion with it. We talked about what our goal is as a village for Bridge Road. So I just want to make sure that the applicant is conscious of, if he's changing his landscaping, that he's bringing his game to add to that.
Yeah, we will work with your consultants and and Nels's staff and make sure that we adhere to the landscaping theme. Since we're doing so much renovation on the site, we have that ability to do that. So.
Okay, 2 stories versus 4 stories. So that looks pretty on paper, but it's a 50-foot max in the code, and you are, or he is proposing a 40-foot 8-inch. So it's really not that much lower than the max. So I don't know, just a little deceiving saying 2 stories versus 4. Maybe if we could just say as well the footage, so our residents are very aware.
Okay.
Rather than trying to trick them, maybe. Resident feedback. I'm going to give you this first before I give you more detailed about the design. Words I got were cold, too modern, New York, no solid walls. We want, needs to be more Florida seaside, too sterile, needs more trees and landscaping for shade and aesthetics. It's too big, which I think contributes to the visual. It's hard to see where Bridge Road is in some of these visuals. Okay.
We might do some sections also, cross sections from Bridge Road through the building. That might also be very helpful for them to understand the profile.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I do like modern. I very much love to travel and see different architecture. I think for our village, and again, going back to the charrette process where we had resident feedback, we had a whole master plan put in place, this is too modern. And I don't want to see this business owner leave, but unfortunately for me, this is too modern for our village.
Okay.
And I know that he's referring to the one building. That building was done before we did the charrette and before we really, the council that was sitting at the time, really started putting in place, what do the people want for this village? So I can't really rely on that building because unfortunately it was done already. But also considering the surrounding area of this property on Bridge Road, it's not going to be cohesive at all. And I'm not even just talking about Paradise Park. The building behind it might be redeveloped one day. I would not want to see another black and white modern building because before you know it, we're going to turn into a black and white color concept, boxy village. And then that's not what I want to live in.
Okay.
So it's too cold. This building is lacking a lot of warmth and charm. So there's too much wall space. Maybe add some textures, some actual architectural elements to the wall to break it up, give some movement, maybe change some of the shape of the windows. The pergola, I am surprised. I don't even know why it's there. I think if you're going to do a pergola, not a little boop. Looks like T-Rex hands. Ferns, be cautious of the ferns. Some of them are invasive. So just make sure you're using the correct landscaping that's fitting to Florida. Again, I would like to see the black come out a little bit and maybe do some color somewhere, like a light pastel to give it a coastal theme rather than black and white. And let's see, okay. Modern coastal is what I'd like to see maybe in addition to like West Indies. I know West Indies was listed in the charrette, in the master plan done by Treasure Coast. That was one of the architecturals. I know Art Deco was not listed in that.
Right.
So some of that roof line, maybe the towers that are holding the stairwells and the elevator can have some sort of architectural element to it rather than just the street.
I agree.
Because it looks like a castle. Again, maybe just try your best to blend some of the sleek lines with some southern charm and Florida coastal aspects and kind of bring them together. So you have modern, but you still look like you belong in coastal Florida, if that makes sense. Not so much Miami or New York.
And we worked on the Azure condominium project that's on Donald Ross Road. And that's a modern condominium building, but it has elements that exactly what you're talking about, that brings it into a little bit more coastal modern.
Right,
Okay.
so you know the neighborhood symphony? I don't want
Yes.
that.
Okay.
Because I feel like if this gets done too modern, the next building, because that whole area is prime for redevelopment someday.
Absolutely, yeah.
They're gonna mimic each other, and then before you know it,
Yeah.
we're not gonna look like a charming little village anymore. We're gonna look like a modern Miami. And that's not what the residents want. So that's why I just want him to be cautious of, is he will set the precedent in that area.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you.
All right, I have a lot of the same comments. I'm going to buzz through mine pretty fast. Is the architect familiar with our master corridor plan? I'm assuming you
Yes.
coordinate that with them. Okay. I do like the roof deck. I think especially if you can see the plantings from the roof, that'll be a really nice detail. The floor plan looked like there might be some trees up there. The renderings didn't really show any landscaping, but I think that'd be a nice detail
Yeah,
to
we haven't
soften
gotten
it
it
up.
out yet, but we anticipate there may be some planter elements that we can put up there.
Yeah, if there looks like bigger trees and you can like see it from street level, that'd be a nice detail.
Okay.
I do like the bracketed balcony frontage and trellis detail. That was one of the suggested frontages for that district from the
Yep.
plan, so thank you for considering that. I agree with the architectural style. I would even be careful with West Indies and coastal. I mean, I feel like everything, including homes in the village, is either like Art Deco modern looking or West Indies / coastal looking. And as we all know, Paradise Park, what we've seen is kind of the West Indies coastal look. The Reserve, which is down the road, is the coastal look. I would be really careful with both of those. I feel like the Starbucks came back, they were modern, they came back with a more preferred coastal look. So I think we're seeing just the two same architectural styles everywhere. That area, those buildings on Bridge Road kind of do have a little Mediterranean charm with the barrel roof. And it is a charming little buildings there. So if there's anything you can do to kind of maintain that charm, and just be very careful with the architectural styles. And same with the colors. I would say commercial and homes that we see, everything's white and gray. So it'd be nice to see some different color tones, or else our whole village is, even existing, the assisted living facility in US 1 just repainted their whole buildings white, so just everything's gonna be white and gray in the village, I feel like, eventually, so we should be careful for that. It looks like we would maybe have to be considering a variance for open space, is that correct?
And that's why I said it up front. Yes, we have we have a couple of items in realm to the landscape that is the issue. Right now, it doesn't meet your codes as far as that goes.
Okay.
So we may have to look at some of those things, and that's what we're going to try to work out with staff. I have some suggestions with the architect that we might look at that may also help us with that issue. I don't think we're going to get 100%, just because the parking we need the parking, and the circulation there. If you don't understand it, this is an access way all the way down to other businesses in the back there, including the restaurant. So we have some limitations. What we did was we took out the driveway in this plan. It's not out yet, so you can go over there and look at it. We took out the driveway on the east to increase the landscape around the building. That gave us that whole setback area and driveway that was on there for landscaping. And we're trying to do as much as we can. So right now we're a little over 5.3% more. We're trying, and we will continue to try and work that out. So,
Okay.
Okay.
I know we're pretty strict about variances up here usually.
I'm very aware of that. Yeah.
So, it might help the applicant if they maybe take some of the design considerations from the corridor plan with the Bridge Road improvements, if they could figure out some civic open space in the front or something. Rear parking's out of the question. I didn't realize that they were gonna try to maintain some of the existing walls. So I don't think you can hide the
Yes,
parking in the back.
and they are. They're trying to maintain that for the integrity of the building. So
yeah, just maybe try to get creative with anything you could provide from the
Okay.
corridor plan there. And then I agree, the height's excessive for 2 stories. I think you have 14-foot floors, so that's really high. So if you could look at that and maybe
Well, I think, and I have to get back with the architect. I have to tell you, I'm not sure that he put in there the 40 feet, 8 inches. It's not 48 feet, it's 40 feet, 8 inches. It may be the tower element that's on the side there.
It is the tower.
It is. And so the real office building is not that tall, it's that element. So we'll look at that, okay? It's not the whole building, but I'll make sure that if it is the whole building, we're gonna talk about it. So I get your drift on that, so.
I know everyone likes high ceilings, but
What's that?
I said I know everyone likes high ceilings, right?
They
but
do.
14 feet is pretty
Everybody
high.
wants, commercial buildings now, in fact, we just helped write a code in one of the municipalities here in the North End. And they're, all of the criteria is that the first floor should be at 15 to 20 feet in height on a retail basis, anything that's non-residential. And that's what the retail communities and those businesses are looking for. Now, this is a professional office. My professional office that I have has 12-foot ceilings inside. And, that's what people are looking for, even on a single-story building. So, but even if it was 14, that's only 28 feet to the top of the plate. So that's why I'm thinking his 40 foot was the elevator core and tower to get out to the deck. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. All right. So we'll look at that.
Thank you. Yep. Any other council?
Just back to addressing the height and the stories. When we're looking at the stairwells coming up onto the roof, again, I'm just eyeballing here. It's about 24 to 2,500 square feet. The footprint of the roof. And you've got 17 by 17 on each stairwell. So the southeast and then the northwest corner. Mm-hmm. So I understand, and we're really looking about 7 feet over what the boundary wall would be. I'll call it the boundary wall, right. The safety wall there. Mm-hmm. So while it could be I think when the renderings come back with the elevations, I think a lot of those concerns I hope will go away, because I saw right away that, it says 40, but it's 40 for about 400 square feet total.
Right, exactly,
Doesn't block any line of sight from anything.
Maybe there's a way that we can capture a little bit of the character by putting some kind of a roof element on that as well. That would, and it doesn't necessarily, I want to make sure you understand, it doesn't necessarily need to be barrel tile to be, okay? So, so we'll look at that. Okay, and it may not be the pitch you think. If you go look at Azure, those pitch in the roofs that they have, their faux roofs is what they did in sections of that building, are very low pitch, and it really came out really nice. The City of Gardens loved it. So, okay, so we'll look at all those items, and that's why we're here tonight. I made a commitment. If I'm working on anything here, we're coming to you all first. So that's it. So, and we truly understand the code. And we understand, Mr. Davis, that nothing said here is in stone, and we're going to take it back and do the best we can and come back with it. So, okay.
Thank you, George.
Anything else?
No. Thank you,
Village
George.
Council, thank you. I did want to make one this project that I should have got up earlier. I want to thank the Village of DeQuesta for having your Parks Department van work with us at the Inlet District to take our tour guide of the Waxahachie River that we did a few weeks ago. And if you didn't get invited, I'll make sure you get invited next time. But the Village of DeQuesta has done that for 2 of our events, and I want to thank you very much on behalf of the Inlet District for doing that. So it was very beneficial. Unfortunately, the route took a lot longer because you guys took that bridge down. I don't know what you're doing, but you got to stop that. Okay, so.
George, before you leave, you brought this up earlier. What is going on with the old Park Avenue site?
Well, we did the renovation plans, which are in the village. It was for a restaurant that Mr. Namath's daughter was working on, and she's no longer going to operate that. So I have to be honest with you, I haven't had an opportunity. We finished it. We just did our final inspections on our office did. I don't know where Nils is at on it or your building department, but we finished our certification on it. We made a couple of corrections that they needed to make on the construction. I don't know who's going in there yet. I do not know, unfortunately. But if I do find out, I'll call the village manager, and that way you'll know. So, okay?
That would be great, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, George. Any public comment? Mr. Bradford?
I think I have to worry.
Tom Bradford, 44 Chestnut Trail. I'm with Mr. Painter. I actually like the modern. I like the white color that they added, proposed for the building. And if you want to soften it up a little bit, I guess that's okay, but it would be a shame if you don't allow this owner to express himself, his desires for architecture through what he wishes to do for the building. I have two comments in regard to, I guess, site plan. Early on in his presentation, George mentioned that, there's this sharing of parking between the restaurant and this property. And it is true that since at least the mid-'80s, that's been going on that I'm aware of. But in this day and age, it requires a shared parking agreement to be approved by you guys. So that's that. My only real problem with the site plan is it's 40 feet away from the center of Bridge Road. And if they're going to have this parking arrangement with the property to the south, and they're open late at night, and if I were the owner of the property, I would wish for the cross-sharing to occur on the south end of my property and not let these patrons of the restaurant come traipsing through my property. So if maybe you can merge those two issues into one where you can get it a little closer to the building. If they have that landscaping percentage requirement that they're having trouble with, maybe, you've heard me talk about this before, maybe you can consider, as if they can't meet it, to let them do the beginning of the streetscape that you envision for Bridge Road and let that count as a contribution because of their inability to meet the 25% landscape open space requirement. So those are my thoughts, and thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, we are not voting on this, so I'm going to move on. We are skipping agenda item 15 on to 16, which is consider approval of Chenmore and Associates authorization for the final engineering for the Dover Ditch Living Shoreline project.
Good evening, Marjorie Craig, Utilities Director. This will be the final design and permitting of the Dover Ditch project, Living Shoreline project. As you know, we did a preliminary, or most of y'all know, we did a preliminary design applied to the Loxahatchee Preservation Initiative to be ranked on the grant projects, and we were ranked #1. We filled out the legislative request forms, both the House and the Senate submitted them, and we, as far as we know, we're still on the list for approval, and we want to be ready to go in anticipation of getting that signed, hopefully. And the reason we want to get started on that as soon as it gets signed is because it takes so long to get an Army Corps permit. So it can take 6 to 9 months, even more. And normally with these appropriations, you have 1 year to complete the project. It's not a huge project, but the permitting is still takes quite some time. So that's why I'm before you today, in anticipation of getting the grant signed. Do you have any
Marjorie, the
questions?
match is only for the construction
That's correct.
element, right? Everything, okay.
Good point. It's only for construction. It's up to $187,000. That's what we requested, 50% of the estimated cost. As we know, costs are a little volatile. But we also have an agreement with the town of Jupiter where they will be funding 40%
Right.
of whatever the remainder costs and this part of the engineering costs as well. So thank you for reminding me.
Any other council questions or comments?
No.
Any public comment? Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Agenda item 17, consider approval on Chenmore and Associates authorization for water treatment plant process control improvements.
So, it's me again. This is for a modification of the existing work authorization for the water treatment plant improvements. When I got here, we were about 90% design, met with the engineers and the plant staff, became aware of a hydraulic issue internal to the plant. With pump number 7, we basically can't operate it right now. So with this engineering cost, $55,400, we can design those modifications and incorporate that into those water treatment plant improvements.
Okay, thank you. Any council
I
comments or
think
questions?
it's very important.
No?
No comments.
Any public comment? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Marjorie, don't go anywhere. Agenda item 18,
I'm glued.
consider approval of an agreement with Fortiline to purchase water meter fittings and water line accessories, piggybacking off Deerfield Beach's contract.
Yes, and so this is the second contract that we brought, Utilities has brought before you. I believe the first one was Corn, Maine. So we are leveraging the purchasing cooperative to have these contracts in place. This is good for the procurement policies that we have. So we have someone on contract as the thresholds, to meet the thresholds, and to have someone ready, to already have a contract in place when we buy the fittings and have small projects done. So we'll bring another one with Ferguson in the future to council, and just this is something that we can leverage those contract pricing.
Okay.
You know how important that is.
Yes. Any comments or questions?
Nope.
Public comment? Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right. Marjorie, last agenda item, number 19, consider approval of Crom Coatings and Restorations contract for water storage tank repairs.
Yes, so a few months ago, I brought forward an agenda item to have the tank, they actually sent a scuba diver down in the tanks to evaluate it and inspect it. This particular contract, we are requesting under the provision of best interest of the village that the contract be with Crom Tanks to repair the pre-stressed concrete ground storage tanks. It requires a specialty type repair. These tanks are 46 years old, 33 years old, or 32 years old. It's not uncommon. A lot of tanks around the state are that old or older, but it's really, really important to keep up with your preventive and corrective maintenance. And Crom, they've been in the business forever, and they're the gold standard. So we're requesting that this work be done under the best interest of the village.
Any comments or questions?
No.
Just have a quick one. Looks like it's mostly just for the surface repairs. Have those tanks, have they been like x-rayed, or is there any reason to x-ray them to see if there's any bigger structural problems, or the surface repairs?
That's a great question. That's one of the reasons we send a scuba diver in there and they take video of the tanks, and then when Crom comes out, they have specialty, they're a specialist. They built the tank, they've been involved with the tanks for all these years, and they do whatever testing and evaluation is necessary and then make those repairs. But if you want more details, I can bring you more details on the specific testing that they've done and their repair methods if you want.
Okay, thank you. All right, any public comment? No? Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, last item, any other matters, council? Thank you, Marjorie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing for me.
Nothing for me.
I have one. We've discussed this before. We said we were going to wait for the seating of the new council. We have not demolished the structure out at Tequesta Park yet, but we said we were going to talk about the idea of going forward with an RFQ for a league at Tequesta Park, and we have not yet followed up on that commitment that we made. And again, the one group that in the past has indicated interest, said they'd be willing to undertake the renovation at their cost. So before we spend $30,000 to take it down, I think we owe it to ourselves and to our residents to at least discuss and make a final determination whether we want to offer the opportunity for one or more parties to come in and have a league operating out of Tequesta Park, and we can see what people are willing to do in terms of helping renovate it. We have no idea at this point, when we're likely to see funding from the state. It would be nice, obviously, since it's state-owned land, but it didn't pass last year, it didn't pass this year, so it's hard to say. And again, I'm out at that park every day, and it gets some use, but it is so sorely underutilized. As I said, I've called it a wasting asset because I just don't feel the potential's there, and we're just not taking advantage of it. So I would like us to address this issue as soon as possible before demolition takes place. Should a group be willing to come in and obviously make the renovations at their cost, then that $30,000 can be redirected to other improvements that are needed at the park. For example, the resurfacing of the tennis courts, replacement of the backboards. There's other things that need to be done aside from the ball fields that those monies could be used for instead of just a demolition project.
We're in for permit for that with Martin County, correct? Mm-hmm. Do we know status? I mean, are we like weeks, months away from getting that permit?
I've heard nothing but horror stories about how long Martin County takes, but it's there. We don't know how long that process will take. Maybe Doug can speak on it a little bit.
The contractor received news this week. They have the demo permit. They're just waiting on the environmental permit. So any day now.
So I'm personally inclined to continue to move forward with the demo. It's been deemed unsafe by a structural engineer, so I think it's a safety issue, and it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, been deemed that the cost repairs are going to cost more than it is to just demo it and build a new one. So I'm inclined to still get rid of it, so I don't want to workshop it. I would be up for workshopping an RFQ again for Tequesta Park. What is other council?
Well, I haven't heard that repairing it would cost more than demoing it and rebuilding it new, but again, we're talking about a group that might be willing to come in and underwrite the cost so that it would be at no cost to the village. So I'm not sure why you would object to at least offering or seeing if somebody is willing to follow through in that fashion.
So I'm not right now in favor of discussing the demolition part. The RFQ part, yes, but I'd like to move forward with the demolition part because if we had someone else come in and build a new one that does not coincide with our master plan, and in respect to it just being voted on so recently, yes, we have new council members, but our history in the past few years is we have new council members coming pretty much every year. If we backtrack on every little thing that's voted on so soon, we're never gonna get anywhere. So if it was more time had passed, I'd consider it, but the fact that it was just voted on earlier this year, I think it's too soon to start changing things that were just put in place. Otherwise, we're never going to get anywhere if we keep going back and forth every time we have someone new.
Well, we had agreed that we were going to defer the RFQ question until we had a new council seated, and all I'm saying is, rather than spending $30,000 taking something apart, if you have a group that comes in that's willing to underwrite fixing what is there currently, and you can reallocate that $30,000 to other uses that are productive and beneficial to the park and its residents, I don't see the logic for saying, let's just go ahead and spend $30,000 demolishing something.
Okay, Councilmember Painter, your thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I'd have to know a little bit more about it. I was here. I was here for one of the council meetings when this was raised, but I would probably need to know more in order to accurately answer that question.
It's a tough issue. I see where Frank is coming from, but at the same time, it needs to be repaired or demoed. And if somebody says they're willing to come in and finance these or pay for these things, but up to what level? Where they're willing, we might say we're willing to invest $100,000 to make it a fully functioning concession stand with hot dog, whatever we have. And so I have a concern of not moving forward. I think either way it's going to be demoed. I do understand it's $30,000, but if that's something that prior councils have done, and I want to protect the integrity of that, I'm all for discussing an RFQ. I would only support an RFQ for a league to come in, but I think I agree. I think we need to move forward with the demolition, because I think, because we don't know, some $30,000 for a concession stand, and we're not, I think if we're gonna do something, let's do it where we can get that activity and the traffic through there, that people would want to come, not just have a, you know, kind of a half-baked concession stand at this point. So I want to see them both move forward.
Okay, so add the RFQ to workshop list, and we're going to continue a demo of the concession stand. Okay, any other?
We have budget meetings coming up, and I believe this will be our 2 new members' first budget meeting. I just want to encourage you to ask questions, because I guarantee no question is too small. There is a resident thinking it and just doesn't have the opportunity to ask it. But I don't see everything when you're 5. I love it when everyone's just throwing something out there so we can cover every angle, because the budget is the money of our taxpayers. So we just make sure we fully conversate in transparency, and I really encourage you just to ask anything.
Okay.
Throw anything out there.
Looking forward
That
to
way
it.
we've covered it.
I love budgets.
Be prepared.
Okay, so I know Councilmember Sartori brought up the sound wall issue for Brightline. I don't know if that's anything that we'd want to workshop. I will say I'm not in favor of a sound wall. I think if anything, we should do landscape buffering, which we've already talked about with our little property on Cypress. But since you brought it up, I wanted to see if anyone else had interest in workshopping.
I think from a workshop perspective, I mean, we could workshop it. I wouldn't want to have a workshop. It could be one of the items on there, but I do think, I drove by it up and down 3 or 4 times yesterday just to look at it. And it looks like Brazilian pepper. I didn't walk it, admittedly, but that's an expense that the entire village would have to bear for. I mean, while it's important, it's the most important thing to those probably 100 residents that live along Cypress. I don't know, it's hard for somebody that lives in the back of on the far western side of our village to say, well, I don't even hear the train. Yeah. And I understand that it's a public safety thing, but Brightline have every right to do what they did. They give us ingress and egress on that to cross those tracks every day. So I don't think it's something that I would like to see. I agree with you, Mayor. If we would do something, it would be maybe enhance some, find the best way to buffer it with landscaping.
I think if we workshopped it, I'd want to discuss what are our options per the budget. So we could look at what we could do, because obviously a wall, not that I'm against it or for it, but that would obviously be very expensive, and that would probably be on a multi-year wait list.
Well, who even owns a property on the west of the tracks?
Well, that's the other thing. Florida East Coast Railroad owns part of that, so you might have to locate it on their property, which means we have to lease that side, and we have to get.
The north side?
North side.
Okay, so we got to get approval. Yeah, so we got to get approval from them, and you're right, the cost of a wall would be very, very expensive.
And to your point, or a few people's point, wall, yes, visually is a great buffer, but plants serve as a much, much better buffer for noise and visual, and hopefully cheaper.
And even for plants, we're going to need FCC approval.
Yeah, anything to put on.
And again, we have the lease issue of they're granting us access to that land, so.
Well, maybe, Jeremy, do you think you could look to see if Brightline's done anything with sound buffering from Miami north up here yet? That might help.
But since we're talking about sound, is there any progress on silencing the horns at the crossings, Jeremy? I mean, I know Martin County had said they didn't want to move forward with it as quickly as we would have liked to have seen, but.
Right, I mean, I think, I gave an update, unless council gave me a different direction, we weren't gonna start the application process until after they started doing their runs, in order to let people get that new regiment going before we decided we were gonna not allow those horns, safety first, other than the inconvenience of the sound. That was our recommendation. Unless council gives me different direction, we're gonna wait, and so there'll be a little bit of overlap, but there's gonna be some horns going, but maybe once a week or once every couple of weeks we see something else about an accident on Brightline. No matter what fault we're talking about, car, pedestrian, whatever, I just think it's a better approach to take. That's what Martin County did, so that's why we thought that was a good recommendation as well.
I agree.
Well, I know I'm still getting resident questions for the people who live along Cypress that are like, hey, when are you guys going to get this done? And they're, you know, because they see the crossings are all completed now.
Right.
So.
But the trains haven't really started flying
No.
through there, like, I mean, because I was out there on one of the intersections, and I got scared, it flew by so fast, so I mean, you know, it's up to you guys tell us what you guys want, but that was our recommendation.
But it's not even so much the Bright Line as it is the freights that are coming through now that, you know, I've stood there and watched the trains go by, and some of those things are running a couple of miles long.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Do not
Okay.
want to catch that one.
I just have one thing. Jeremy, would you mind giving kind of a recap of our meeting with the sheriff's office on Beach Road?
Yeah, you know, there's been, over the time I've been here, there's been plenty of conversations about, you know, speed over there on Bridge Road, parking, some indecency over on Bridge Road. There's been complaints, you know, typically most of those issues fall within the unincorporated areas. Beach Road Association has had, I guess, several meetings over the last couple of years, but recently they invited the county, Tequesta, the sheriff's department, our chief, and basically wanted some kind of solution, wanted Tequesta to take over that. Leaving that meeting, the sheriff's office sent us an MOU to provide you know, patrol for that area, which patrol doesn't necessarily cover some of the issues. I mean, we can do a traffic stop, but we wouldn't be able to enforce parking or enforce some of the other issues. So Marino's office called a meeting with us to see if we can come up with a solution. You know, out of that meeting, basically, you know, Palm Beach County Sheriff's agreed that it's their responsibility. They're going to try to provide more enforcement. You know, the village was, I would say, pretty strong that we weren't going to do it for free. The new bill that came out said that that the sheriff's office can't contract with the municipality, can't pay, do an interlocal agreement to provide that service. So we're kind of like in a rock and a hard place. We're not doing it for free, and you know, we can't do this. You know, this new bill 1595 wouldn't allow us to even take money for it or allow the sheriff to push money to us. So. At the end of the meeting, I mean, basically Palm Beach County Sheriff said they're going to do probably more enforcement. I know on weekends they do have an overtime or extra patrol over there, at least through the summer hours. So they put up some parking signs, some no parking signs in a couple areas over there. So they think that they're progressing or trending better over there with complaints. So, I mean, unless you had anything to add, I know the mayor's been there and she's been a part of this conversation.
Yeah, no, we kind of just did a recap summary of the meeting that the Commissioner's Office agreed with, so we're just going to send that to the Beach Road Association just to kind of close the loop on that, because that meeting was in April, it was in March or April. So just want to keep you guys in loop, especially in case you get any emails or resident calls after that letter goes out to them.
I'll share that letter with everybody.
All right, that's it. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Oh, yes, Nelsa.
I just want to share the good news. Yes, the American Planning Association selected the Tequesta Parks Master Plan to be presented at the September conference in Jacksonville. And as a great example of public participation, design, association is recognizing that.
Very nice. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Ending.
Now can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.